Stacy, so wonderful to have you on the show today. I know where you are, but you got to tell everybody where you are.
I'm currently sitting in Mount Maunganui, New Zealand. It is a little beach town that is about 2.5 to 3 hours southeast of Auckland.
Okay, so you're testing my geography here. This is the North Island.
It is. It's where
Okay, amazing. And you're there because your husband is New Zealand?
a Kiwi. Yeah, he's a
He's
Kiwi. Yeah.
okay. So first thing, we have a mutual friend, Dr. Jen Wagner, who I adore. I just think is amazing. And she has something called Prosper. We had her on, and she was telling me, she's like, women are not small men. They're different, which one would think would be obvious, but actually sort of isn't. So let's talk a little bit about exercise physiology and what's different between our genders.
It starts in utero, and a lot of people don't really realize that it does. I mean, you can see different epigenetic changes with different levels of the woman's hormones that are coming around the uterus and into the developing fetus. But then when you're looking at DNA structure and you're looking at the XX versus XY, the female fetus is more resilient to stress. And then after the baby is born, we see differences in sleep patterns, development patterns just across childhood. And then when you get to puberty, you have this incredible dogmatic change with girls who are getting the onset of their menstrual cycle, their hip angle changes, their shoulder girdle widens to match the hip angle. They grow longer legs and arms and torso faster than boys do. So we're seeing all of these changes, but yet when you like bring it down to sport or anything like that, there's no actual definition of let's pull them apart. And when we do pull it apart, we see that by the nature of being XX, girls into women are born with more of the proteins and mitochondria for being able to use fatty acids. And they have a slightly different availability of being metabolically flexible just by the nature of being born XX. We see differences in bone density. We see differences in bone structure. We see that XY men, they have more hemoglobin and red cell and iron counts than women do. We see women have smaller hearts, smaller lungs. And so there's all these different physiological and morphological differences between the sexes, but it's not ever brought to the forefront to say, hey, you know what? If we look at exercise, we look at nutrition, we look at sport, it's all just been generalized from a male model. And we're seeing it even expound now with AI and the healthcare AI. Like when we're thinking about artificial intelligence, it's learning from the data and the data sets that are there. And all those are already male biased. So when we're getting recommendations that are coming from AI, it's still perpetuating that gender data gap and the male biases. So yeah, there's still a lot of work to like unpack everything so that we can be really specific that as XX woman, we know that these are the things that you should be doing to improve health and longevity. And as an XY man, these are the things that you should be doing to improve health and longevity. In a
That's
nutshell.
super interesting. So let's pull that apart. I'm a 65-year-old guy. I don't know how old you are. Okay, I'll ask you. How old are you?
I'm 51.
51. Okay. How should your exercise profile look different than mine?
Yeah. So women don't age in a linear fashion like men do. So we see like this linear projection of age on a lot of the graphs, right? And we see around 60, 65, there's a decrease in lean mass, bone density, changes in lipid levels, that kind of stuff. That's in a male model. But in women, because of perimenopause, there's a discernible demarcation around the mid 40s where women really, really have an impactful change that promotes, I guess, aging for the most fact. So we're looking at the change in the ratio of our sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone, and to some extent testosterone, because it starts to decline under stress. Every system of the body is affected by estrogen and progesterone. So we see that at the onset of puberty, as I was describing earlier, where it changes our biomechanics and our body fat distribution and our center of gravity, as well as our metabolism and some of our cardiovascular factors. On the other side of things, we see that women going through perimenopause, I mean, the first 5 years after the onset of menopause, there's a 1/3 drop in your bone mass if you're not really careful about preserving it. So we see that's why there's such a high incidence of osteopenia and osteoporotic women that are in their early to mid 50s. We see that there's a significant change in body comp with a drop in lean mass and an increase in body fat, specifically that deep abdominal visceral fat. We're seeing changes in mood, cognition. We're seeing changes in gut microbiome. So, all of these things are compacted in perimenopause, whereas men in a linear fashion have a longer time for all these changes to happen. So, when we're talking about aging and longevity, we need to look at what are women doing when they're entering perimenopause versus what a man is doing when they're in their 40s and 50s. So, for women who are entering perimenopause and we're having these changes in the ratios of our sex hormones, we have to look at an external stress that's going to create an adaptive response the way our hormones used to support. So, this is where we look at differences in resistance training. Instead of doing the typical pink dumbbell, 2 sets of 30 reps, which you could get away with when you're in your 20s to get a little bit of quote toning or muscle definition. When you're in your 40s, it doesn't work. It's a metabolic stress that doesn't actually create lean mass development, nor does it increase strength and power. So we have to look at more of a power-based training, because if we're looking at power-based training, it's more of a central nervous system response. So this is the really heavy loads, low reps. We're looking at working in reps of fatigue. So reps of fatigue means that you do a certain amount of reps really well with good form, and you might have one or two left before you're completely failure. So we look at lifting at that heavier end to create a response that now the nerves are saying, hey, wait a second, we need to be able to recruit more fibers. We need to have a faster nerve conduction. And by the way, we need to build more lean mass. So that's a difference in resistance training. So if a man was in his 40s, he could get away with hypertrophy type work to failure. So you could do your 20 to 30 reps, right? And you'd still get a muscle development factor. You'd gain more lean mass. But for women in their perimenopausal years, it doesn't work. It doesn't help change body composition because it's not a strong enough stress to invoke change. And the other thing we're looking at with like cardiovascular work, we need to really polarize when we are in our perimenopausal years. So we need to do that super high intensity work and really, really baseline low, slow stuff, but putting a precedence on quality over quantity. So the whole buzz factor of zone 2 training that's been going in and around, like everyone should be doing zone 2. You really want to increase your fat metabolism. By the nature of being XX, women are already metabolically flexible. They already burn fat. What we need to do is we need to polarize to be able to keep our fast twitch fibers, to be able to keep producing lactate, because we need the brain to understand lactate to maintain proper brain fuel and brain metabolism for the gray matter. So there's a whole bunch of different aspects to that exercise component, especially in the perimenopausal years, that is different from what men can do and still see results.
So I'm going to ask you to put some numbers on this. So in terms of zone 2, so we got 7 days in a week. We'll assume we'll train 6 days a week. I'm going to strip out the strength training for a moment, and we're just going to deal with the cardiovascular. How many minutes of zone 2 versus what quantity of, fairly high intensity?
So I'll have to quantify high intensity work because there's so many different definitions really, because we'll see like the boot camp high intensity classes, which is not true high intensity. When we're talking about high intensity, we're talking about high intensity interval training where it might be a total time of 40 to 45 minutes. Within that, you're having good warm up and cool down. And then the actual exercise set could be 1 to 4 minutes of a interval of 80, 85% and variable recovery. So you're looking, maybe you're doing 1 minute on, 1 minute off, or maybe you're doing 2 minutes on and 1 minute off. So you're trying to maintain a heart rate of between 80 and 85% for 20 minutes. And you're working within the variability of recovery to maintain that.
So this is contrary to what I understand. If I have a heart rate monitor, and we're not talking about effort, I'm just looking at my heart rate monitor. We want to get the heart rate. So for me, like sort of my max is about 165, mid 150s, I'm really feeling it. Keeping that for a period of time would be very uncomfortable, but I can keep it there for like a minute or so, bring it down to like 130, a minute on, a minute off, to whatever your interval is, 2 on, 2 off. Is that what we're talking about?
Exactly. Yep. So if you're looking within the 45 minutes, you have a really good block of time with the recovery integrated into it, that when you look at your metrics at the end of that workout, you've spent around 18 to 20 minutes in that 80 to 85% zone. but you're able to keep it there because you're not trying to hold it for a whole 20
Okay.
minutes,
Right.
right? You're
Right.
doing
Okay.
your variable recovery because you're polarizing within the workout. Now, the other factor that we talk about is sprint interval training, which is a subset of high intensity interval training. And they do two different things. So, if we're looking at sprint interval training, this is 30 seconds or less, as hard as you possibly can go, with 2 to 5 minutes recovery between each interval. So, I teach people like on the assault bike, go as hard as you possibly can for 30 seconds, going to fully recover, and then we're going to try to chase those meters and beat them. So people are really learning to make themselves uncomfortable. It is a significant
It's
challenge. No one
horrible.
loves it. It's
It's
horrible. Right.
horrible.
Right.
Yes.
But when we look at that kind of training, you're having a complete system response that is telling the body that we don't need to store visceral fat and we need to increase our insulin sensitivity. So you're having epigenetic changes that occur with this high intensity work. When we're looking at the little bit lower of the high intensity interval training, not the sprint interval training, this is more of metabolic capacity for getting more exerkines, saying, hey, let's pull more fat into the mitochondria. Let's improve that mitochondrial function because we start to have a little bit of dysfunction in the mitochondria when we are perimenopause. So it's all about improving the muscle economy. So both of those work really, really well to improve the functionality of muscle, the quality of muscle, body composition, and then both of those work to attenuate cognitive decline. So when we're looking specifically at what's happening in perimenopause, and we're seeing all these changes within muscle quality, bone, gut, where we're putting our body fat, as well as all the issues we have around brain fog and cognitive issues, when we're looking at specifically targeting that with intensity types of exercise, we see a lot of fantastic outcomes. But when we're talking about the zone two, it's not a hard enough stimulus to invoke change. And when we're looking at the zone two data, it's all about improving metabolic flexibility and fat burning. And women are already there. So we don't need to spend time there. I get pushback there because we have people who are ultra runners or want to go out for their long run or their long ride. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying you have to take a step back and go do your soul food, go for your hike or your run with your friends, go for a group ride, whatever it is, but don't make that the bread and butter of what you are doing. Don't spend the 3 or 4 sessions that you have in a week on zone 2 stuff. We want to look at 2 to 3 really good high intensity sessions. So that could be one true high intensity interval session and 2 sprint interval sessions. Or maybe you're doing 2 high intensity interval sessions and 1 sprint interval session. It doesn't take a lot. It's not about how often you're or how long you're spending time doing it. It's about the quality of the work. So if you wake up one day and you're like, I have this high intensity interval session, I'm going to go try it. And after the first 10 minutes, you're like, I can't hit those intensities. Then you call it and you do some mobilization. Maybe you go for a really slow, chill walk. You do something different because if you start trying to do that high intensity work and you can't hit the actual intensities you need to, you fall into a moderate intensity. And this is the problem that so many women end up in is this moderate intensity. We see this with the F45s and the Orange Theories and the boot camp classes and the quote high intensity interval training classes that are a lot of the gyms are promoting, especially to women who are 40 plus. But it's not polarized enough and the intensity isn't pushed enough to actually create true high intensity interval training. And when you're in that moderate intensity, it just creates more sympathetic drive
Mm.
and you don't get any of the changes that I was just talking about with regards to muscle quality, muscle function, body composition, because your body's in this stressed state and we don't have any post exercise responses to reduce that stress state. So this is where I always get women who are in their 40s going, I'm doing all this stuff and it's not working. It's like, well, we need to pull back and see what you are actually doing for high intensity, how many days you're doing it, and if you are really, really challenging yourself in those intervals. So when we pull people back, we have them do 2 really specific workouts in a week and they understand, hey, wait, I can only do 2 in a week because if I try to do 4, I just hit that moderate intensity because I don't have the recovery and the ability to hit that true high intensity.
This is great. I personally use zone two as sort of a de-stress
Yeah.
situation. my strength workouts are about an hour and a half a day. And then I do my cardio in the morning. And the major thing that I deal with is physiological stress.
Yeah.
So, like in the mornings, I will get on the treadmill and just walk uphill for 45 minutes as a way to just sort of bring things down.
Decompress.
Exactly. If we're talking about lifting heavy 2 or 3 times a week, I can't really do heavy deadlifts more than once a week. It's too impactful on my body.
Right.
And, if I do what you're describing, like a sprint workout and a couple hit workouts along with the weight training, what are your strategies for taking somebody out of sympathetic drive, getting them into parasympathetic so that they can recover? Because
Hmm.
that's the fail,
Yeah,
right?
that's absolutely the fail.
Recover.
Right. So reteaching women how to train is one of the biggest things. So when we're talking about heavy lifting, we're not talking about an hour and a half in the gym. Like I did a heavy lifting session this morning of front squats and hip thrusts, and I was in and out in 25 minutes. So we're looking at that kind of like short,
Mm.
really focused. Every 2 minutes, you're doing 5 reps of a heavier load, and you're doing that, maybe you're doing 5 to 6 sets of that with adequate recovery. So you're not supersetting, you're not doing anything else, you're just fully recovering. And then you can finish that 25 or 30-minute session with a sprint interval session. So that sprint interval might be another 15 minutes. If you're talking about 30 seconds or less with really adequate recovery between. So then you're hitting 2 of your sessions in one less than 1 hour session in the gym, right? So if we're looking at it, we periodize the strength training where maybe we're going to do it 3 days a week. So Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. Monday is a squat focus. Wednesday is a push pull focus. Thursday is your posterior chain, deadlift, hip thrust, whatever it is, right? And then 1 or 2 of those days, we're finishing with battle ropes or explosive kettlebell swings to hit the sprint interval. And then one other day of the week, you might go do a true hit session. But your hit session could be with your friends. Say you're walking up a hill or your stairs. Then you can say, okay, well, I'm going to push harder for this 1 minute and I'm going to run up the stairs. I'll meet you there and we'll keep going or not. Like you can make it work for you, however it is. And it doesn't have to be an hour and a half session. It's all about retraining and reframing, getting women out of the mindset that calories in, calories out. We have to spend lots of time in the fat burning, all the stuff that was pushed on us in the 90s. Like we have to really unpack that and say, the longer duration that you have, the more chance you have of increasing sympathetic drive by driving cortisol up. Now,
Mm.
cortisol isn't a bad thing, but there's this rhetoric around increased baseline of cortisol. You're having elevated cortisol. You shouldn't do high intensity because of cortisol. If you do true high intensity and you do really good heavy lifting, you have a post exercise response that increases growth hormone and testosterone, which leads for a parasympathetic response. So, this is the reteaching of let's reduce the volume, make sure that we're compounding our workouts appropriately so that we have adequate recovery between the sessions. So, you might do a Monday morning and a Wednesday evening. So that you end up with 36 hours or more between your sessions and you're still going to get a lot of benefit from that. And then we're talking about the parasympathetic activity. I always tell people, look, you need to find a point in your day. For me, it's first thing in the morning before anyone else gets up because I want to have that absolute silence where it's just 10 minutes of maybe some mobilization or stretching or drinking a tea or a coffee outside, just being aware of the environment, just with no noise and learning how to breathe and center yourself to bring yourself back to that point at any time during the day. So there is a lot of that mind body connection that comes with it. So we look at kind of well, actually 4 things to invoke change. First is sleep. If we don't have really good sleep, we can't invoke any kind of change. There's no body composition change. There's no mental status change at all without really good, adequate sleep. Then we work on the physical for the most part because women can start to see really good, definitive change with heavy lifting, with strength within a few weeks. And then because nutrition is so polarizing, we work on nutrition kind of after we do the first 2. Because most of the time, if you ask someone about nutrition, they go, oh, I'm keto or I'm IF or I'm vegan or I'm plant-based. Like it's an identification, right? So there's a lot to unpack there. And across those 3, we're working on the mind body, right? We're learning how to invoke parasympathetic. So after 20 some odd years of working with people, I found that those are the 3 that you can really manipulate. Sleep first, mind, body throughout the other ones. Sometimes it changes the physical and the nutrition because some people want to work on nutrition because of the physical first. But for the most part, I find retraining people how to train is so much more effective than just giving them a training program and saying go.
This is fascinating. I got to talk to my PTs about cutting down my program. They kill me.
Yeah. That's like an hour and a half. That's a long time to be in the gym every day.
Yeah, they've amped it up to everything is now 4 sets of 10, 90-second rest between each
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Like,
It's
what are you doing 4 sets of 10? Are you trying to get to fatigue? Are you trying to get hypertrophy? What are you doing with that?
well, it sort of depends on what they're doing to me. Like I said, the de-stressing is like a big issue in my life.
Right. Right. And I find that when people do a lot of metabolic stress, like the higher reps and lower loads, it invokes more stress. Because if you're doing the heavier loads and less reps, you leave feeling worked, but not exhausted. And
Right.
that feeds forward to a better parasympathetic drive later.
I'll have to have a word with them. They seem to be confused. They seem to think I'm like a 20-year-old Olympian preparing for something or other. I don't know how they got that idea, but
Can say, hey, you know what? I talked to this strange woman who lives in New Zealand, and I'd really like to try something different.
a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, you mentioned food. So I make it a point to never be prescriptive about food. You're in the realm of like being prescriptive about God, like
Right.
bad place to go.
Like,
You're not going to make any friends. So tell me a little bit about what your thoughts on nutrition are. Just what do you think?
yeah, so I always bring it back to the gut microbiome. Like being a, very why asking question type person and cellular levels and things, I look at the gut microbiome. And one of the really huge driving factors of poor body composition is having very poor gut microbiome. So if we're looking at a diet that really enhances gut microbiome, then it feeds forward for both sexes to really thrive. So I always tell people get as much fruit and veg and whole grains as you can, like really try to garner that fiber component and make that the base of everything. And of course, high protein, but it doesn't matter what that protein is. If it's animal source or plant source, have a mix of it, right? And it's always the 80-20 rule. Like 80% of the time, you're really nailing it. And then 20% is life. Yeah, because you don't want to stress if you're on vacation or school holidays or traveling or, like someone brings you a really nice bottle of wine or whiskey or whatever it is. You don't want to say, well, I can't have that because it doesn't work with my ethos at the moment. It's like, enjoy it. Like life's too short. So you got to enjoy things.
When you're talking about fruit and veg and
Mhm.
things like that, are you speaking about absolute quantity or variety thereof?
Both. Both, actually. Yeah, so, I mean, when you're looking at plates and things, it's like, let's go with the Japanese idea of your plate or bowl is primarily veg and some whole grains, and then you have an accent of meat. So your veg and whole grain is a lot of protein as well, and then your accent of meat complements it. And then fruit can be dessert or snacks, or you can put the fruit in with your salad. So it's lots of different colors, variety. It makes the bulk of everything. And even if you're making, a sauce or something, you can look at, well, is there an opportunity to put in some spinach or some cauliflower into this red sauce? So there's lots of ways of increasing the vegetable intake without going, oh gosh, I have to have another massive, huge bowl of salad.
And what are your thoughts on, testing methods? I find when people tell me like I have to eat 170 pounds, so like people want me to 170 grams of protein, that is just like so, it's just like so much. Is there a testing method on that to find out like how much? I'm guessing we're all a little different, at different activity levels, different microbiome and such.
So, I always like to remind people that the recommended daily allowance of protein is based on the least amount you should have to prevent malnutrition.
Right.
So when we're talking about protein, we have to look at our lifestyle. If you're sedentary, you probably need about an another one third onto that. If you're very active, like you, going to the gym, doing cardio stuff, you're really trying to get that 2 to 2.3 grams per kilo a day. So around that 1 to 1.1 gram per pound. And you're like, shit, 170, that's a lot. But when you start looking at all the things that have protein in it, you'd be surprised. It's like you look at green peas, edamame, nuts, seeds, your ancient grains, your spelt, your amaranth, your bulgur wheat, even things like Brussels sprouts has some protein in it. Like pea protein isolate is one of the protein powders out there that is almost the same as whey. And then you can look at all your dairies, your eggs, your fish, your meat, all of these things all combined. So when I do a schematic for like a vegan and they're like, how do I get 150 to 170 grams of protein? It's like, okay, well, we look chia seeds and oatmeal with some nut butter for breakfast. And then we have a combination of different veggies and grains for lunch, and then dinner might be tofu, curry, and that kind of stuff. And all of a sudden, there's 150 grams in there, and they're like, "Whoa, how did I do that?" So we're not looking at 150 to 170 grams of just animal based. We're looking at everything and
Hmm.
combining all those things throughout the day. So it's really easy to get that protein in if you're doing a wide variety of both plant and animal based stuff. If you are fully plant-based, you might have to work a little bit harder to up that protein, like really including some tempeh, maybe some tofu if you can handle it, putting some more quinoa and black rice in different places. And sometimes, supplementation really does come into to play, and it's not a bad thing. There's a reason why we have pea protein isolate or whey protein isolate as a supplement, not as a mainstay, but as a supplement to boost the protein level, especially in times of really heavy training loads, where we know that protein not only helps with lean mass and recovery, but also helps with immunity. So we're going from winter to summer, but the weather right now is so variable. I feel like everyone's sick. It's like, okay, up the protein, let's get everyone's immune systems going. And so for you guys in the northern hemisphere, when you're starting to cool down and kids are going back to school and there's a whole bunch of germs going around, it's like up your protein, let's keep your immune system going.
So you mentioned about sort of seasonal. Let's talk
Mhm.
about within the day. Assuming we have some kind of a workout here, we get up in the morning. How do you counsel people to fuel themselves through the day, taking into account these, impactful workouts?
Yeah, so there's definitely a sex difference here, right? So we see women should not do any kind of fasted training. So for women, we're looking at having some protein and carb before first thing in the morning workout, and then afterwards having a real breakfast. And for women, it works better to have smaller, regular meals throughout the day. And we're talking, not massive, huge portions, but you could break up your breakfast and have half breakfast before training, the other half after. Then you have a snack of good quality protein, could be nuts and a hard boiled egg or something mid-morning with some carrots or an apple. Lunch is a big mixed grain and veggie bowl with some other lean protein in it. And then afternoon, you're having another high quality protein carb snack. Dinner, if you're trying to lose weight but still train hard, then we look at dinner and take away maybe 150 calories. Usually that's dropping a glass of wine or having a slightly smaller dinner plate so your portion size is just a little bit smaller, but not enough to create a calorie restrictive response that invokes kind of a sympathetic tizzy in the brain. So it's just a very, very small amount. And we take it away from dinner because we see that if you are having less food at night, then you're able to sleep better. So all feeds into the sleep hygiene aspect. For men, men are more capable with regards to being resistant to negative outcomes. You can do fasted training. It's not necessarily ideal, but you can get away with it and then have really good breakfast with high protein, about 30 to 40 grams protein after your training, and then throughout the day, having regular hits of protein as well. By the nature of the research and looking at what happens with men's bodies versus women's bodies, we know that men can have a big, huge bolus of protein, and that's fine, but women need to break it up throughout the day.
You use the word fasted, which brings me to time restricted
Time
eating.
restricted eating. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So buzzwords, right? So we look at time restricted eating or intermittent fasting. If we look at population research, and with that population research is chronobiological research. We see that in both men and women who hold the fast till noon or after, and their eating window is from like 12 to 6 or 7 p.m., they don't have any positive outcomes. They still have sympathetic drive, metabolic syndrome. They don't get any of the supposed benefits that you get from intermittent fasting or time restricted eating. For those who break their fast by about 8 o'clock in the morning and their eating window ends at 4 or 5, they end up with all the positive outcomes that you're seeing with
Eight
time
hour
restricted.
window. Okay.
But when we're really dialing it down to sex differences and looking at what women should be doing versus what men should be doing, we look at circadian rhythm, really. So men's circadian rhythm is shorter than a woman's circadian rhythm. So men's is about 23 hours, women's about 25 hours. And for women, we really need to eat within a half an hour of waking up to counter that cortisol peak. Because if we don't, the hypothalamus is like, we're in a bit of a stress situation here, a flight or fight situation. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start really catabolizing my lean mass.
Oh,
So for women, we really need to be conscious and cognate of our circadian rhythm and the way that our hormone pulses throughout the day, cortisol pulses throughout the day, testosterone, estrogen, and after ovulation, progesterone as well. And to some extent, progesterone that's not produced from the egg breaking down. So in perimenopause, you still have pulses of progesterone. But for men, the circadian rhythm is slightly different. And we see that under times of stress, men lean up because the brain is like, "Oh, we have to get ready to really fight or to really dive in and find some calories." So that's why we're looking at the data of time restricted eating, holding things, restrictive calorie restriction, and how that affects men's lean mass versus women's lean mass.
hmm.
So for women, time restricted eating is just normal eating, where you eat breakfast, you have dinner, you don't eat any snacks after dinner, and you go to bed, right? So you stop eating 2 to 3 hours before bed, you wake up, have food within a half an hour. That's your quote time restricted window. During the day, you're eating at regular intervals, and then you are tapering down your food and you're not eating after dinner. For men, there's a little bit more leeway where you can hold windows for a longer period of time if you are really looking for some particular benefit. But when we look at disruption of circadian rhythms, we know that circadian rhythms are set with day and light and food and meal planning. So if you're really trying to get even energy, maximize your ability to train hard and to sleep well, you probably shouldn't be holding a really long fasting window either. You should probably follow the whole stop eating after dinner or, no snacks after dinner, wake up, have breakfast.
I'm somewhat friendly with Brian Johnson, who stops eating at 11 in the morning and he goes to bed at like 8 or 9 at night. I have to have something about an hour before I go to bed. Like I have some like collagen in my tea or something, or
Yeah.
else I just wake up in the middle of the night starving. And
Do you eat enough in the day?
oh my God, do I feel like I'm a farm animal? It's like, oh, I'm either moving
Okay.
or cooking.
Okay. Yeah, because that is the thing we see. We've done a few studies with like the continuous glucose monitors and sleep
Yeah,
studies. And a
right.
lot of people who wake up a lot are hypoglycemic because they haven't eaten enough in the day or they go to bed slightly low blood sugar and they should have it up a little bit. So yeah, if you're like, I need to eat before bed, then you're the exception to the rule.
I've worn a CGM and the alarm will go off. It's the alarm that says like, wake
Morning, morning, morning.
you need to go to a hospital. And I'm like, fine. But yeah, I'm one of them.
Yeah, fair enough.
No good. I want to touch on something. I saw a pod that you did with Jeff from Momentous,
Yeah.
and the topic of empathy and stress came up, which I thought was fascinating. Can you
Thanks.
take us there?
Yeah, so although I live in New Zealand, I travel a lot because most of my work is in the Northern Hemisphere. And over the past few years, I've seen this significant shift in humanity where there is actually a significant loss of empathy and support networks. And we know that the human beings are social. We're social by nature, right? But the friendships aren't real. We see a lot of social media, and people are looking at friendships through social media, their likes and swiping and all that kind of stuff. So there's no real connection. And there's some research coming out showing that there is that connection between the false friendships and lack of empathy. But people are so angry. And as we get older, we really want to foster empathy and understand where another person is coming from instead of jumping to a reaction because we need those social connections. We need to make sure that we have social support, we have people we can lean on. We don't want to be locked in a room somewhere and trying to get through our thoughts and not have any kind of support, because that is a significant contributor to all the negative mental health issues that we're seeing come down the line. So I think Jeff's question was how we age gracefully. And I was like, starting with empathy and understanding another person's point of view, understanding where they're coming from and not reacting. Because if you have empathy and you can respond in kindness, then people will take a step back and do the same. So we need to start spreading that empathy and kindness so that we can garner and recapture those social connections of true friendships, instead of really leaning on the superficialness of social media and the superficial friendships that we see so often now. I mean, I see it from my daughter's 12 and that friendship circle, and then you see it through the high school circles and onwards. And it's just really sad to see how humanity has evolved in the past few years, especially with the trigger of the pandemic and the lockdowns, and how everyone got so angry and divisive and so quick to jump to such a negative thought process.
I want to bring this to something we talked about a little earlier in the conversation about stress. So this idea of increased empathy is a parasympathetic trigger, and it helps us, well, I'll put it the other way. Lack of empathy leads to anger and stress, and very difficult to get into a parasympathetic state, and you're not ever recover.
Absolutely.
I thought that was just fascinating the way you tied those together. That was a little moment of genius there, Stacy. That was great.
I mean, if you think about it, like if you are on social media as a figure, and then someone has negative comments, most of us know not to read comments, but sometimes that comes through and you have like the significant negative reaction, the
Yeah,
PTSD type reaction, and then that stays with you.
yeah.
And it stays for weeks and weeks and weeks, and it just significantly damages the ability to recover and relax and have that parasympathetic drive. So if we see one comment can do that to one person, then all the rhetoric that goes around is just creating this massive mental distress and lack of ability to relax and be able to sleep well and enjoy life.
I thought it was just a wonderful thing. You know, we talk a lot about the sauna, the ice bath, or red light, or
Biohacking. Yep.
all that sort of stuff, right? Like whatever we can do to like chill it out, go down and like float in the pool for a while or whatever it is. You brought in this entirely other factor, which is something really basic and human, increasing our empathetic skill set. Maybe you don't need to do all that other stuff if you can just do a little bit of this.
Like, it feels good to be nice to people, and then they get the niceness back.
As we're talking, there's a lot of, these sort of like, I'm going to get some hate mail because I'm going to say this, but there's a lot of this sort of like like biohacker, sort of
Absolutely.
like prescriptive, the stack, the this, the like, I mean, come on. And
Yep.
I just think like, how much time do you spend out of your house, like saying hi to people you don't know? Like,
Right.
probably not much.
No, not at all. Or when you ask someone how their day has been, that you really
Yeah,
mean it, right?
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I often puzzled about this sort of like new religion of that sort of stuff and how it does take the place of, when I was growing up, we went to church every Sunday. I don't do that anymore, but there was like a community there, and there's a lack of that. And I think that that's, for a lot of the reasons that you mentioned, this sense of like, I need to do something. So I'm going to follow whoever.
Have a community there by following them and
Right.
seeing how other people are responding. Yeah, but it's not true community.
No, I'm part of a distant tribe that I think I'm part of in my mind, but I really don't have any connection to them. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So now our job is to go out and be nice to people.
It's something I tell people when you're in an elevator, you just turn to whoever else is in the elevator with you. You just say, I love your shoes. Those are great. Super safe, right?
Yeah,
Like you're not saying
absolutely.
anything about their shoes, like, right? I do this all the time. I've never had anyone attack me in an elevator for saying this. And they're always just like, oh, wow. Oh, thank you for noticing. I got them wherever. They're, sometimes I just get sort of a grunt, but that's
Your
their way.
response.
Maybe that's their way of connecting. They grunt. Okay, I'm good with that. But I think that's like part of the reason that we do all this stuff that we're talking about. The reason that we lift weights, we go to the gym, we try and eat well and sleep, all this stuff. It's so that we can have a joyful human life. It's not so we go home and like live in a closet. That's crazy, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I think we can emphasize that this is a part of high performance living, is what I'm trying to say. I love it that you brought that up and tied those two things together because I think that's quite rare.
Thanks. Yeah, it's a mission to get more people talking and being nice to each other.
Yeah. Dr. Stacy, you are awesome. And what time is it in New Zealand now?
Good morning, tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Wow. Wow. You're ahead of me. Okay. As always.
You get to have a long sleep first before you have to face today. So, yeah.
That's true. Thank you so much. I wanted to talk a little bit about BDNF, and I think this is wonderful. You're just a
Awesome.
fantastic resource. And at some point, I want to get a full debrief on the menopause conference that was last week. A lot of the stuff you told me about that is really quite different from my understanding. So I'm looking to be educated on that.
That'd be awesome.
Stacy, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
You too.
Take care. Bye-bye.